Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good morning. This is Shri here with a recap of the national championship game where UConn defeated Purdue by 15 points last night. And what an unbelievable performance it was by UConn. And really proud that my alma mater has won its sixth championship in the last 25 years. They've now gone back to back. The third team to do it in recent memory, Duke and Florida being the other two. UConn has now established themselves as the basketball capital of the world. Right now, in the last 25 seasons, UConn's got 6, North Carolina and Duke have 3 each. So they've actually doubled 2 of the teams that are called as the Blue Blood. The Huskies are 6-0 in the national championship game, 12-1 when they make the Final Four. But coming back, we can debate the history later. Coming back to this game and just listening to the recaps, both what Dr. Dan and I did a couple of days ago before we picked this game, both of us did think that UConn was going to win. It was going to be a close game. Edey was going to have a monster game. My keys to the game for Purdue to beat UConn was that Edey needs to have a great game. Purdue guards need to have a lot of three-pointers, and their defense needs to step up. Edey did have a great game, 37 points. Although, he played really amazing the first, maybe you would say 10-15 minutes. The score was tied 23-all. And then after that, it was UConn basically putting the clamps on the Purdue guards. I think the difference was UConn didn't really care how much Edey was going to score. He scored 37 points. A lot of these points came towards the end when UConn had already established a huge lead in the game. Almost went up to like 17 points at one point. But that was the story of the game. Edey gets his points, but the Purdue guards had 1 three-pointer made. They had about 7 attempts and 1 three-pointer made. And if you look at how UConn won against Alabama was shooting 8 for 11 in the first half in the Final Four game, and UConn restricted them to just 3 for 11 or something like that in the second half. So Dan Hurley and the UConn Huskies go back-to-back. Much deserved win for Danny and the boys there. Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton, Steph Castle, and Klingon. These are the 4 players that you'll probably hear during the tournament, but there are so many other role players that came in and made their mark, whether it was a Diarra, Caravan, or even Samson Johnson. When Klingon was in foul trouble, he came in and gave the boost. 2 dunks back-to-back. He got into foul trouble and he was fouled out. But the key for UConn was to shut down the Purdue guards on the defensive end and let Edey score in the paint. But the Purdue guards had not much breathing room to even get a shot off, because UConn's defense was locked down. Watching the game, they were only up by 6, but that 6 points looked like almost 10 points for Purdue, because you knew what UConn always does in the second half. They clamp down on defense, they run their offense, a lot of cuts, backdoor cuts, and then the ball movement that they have is just incredible to generate easy buckets for their players. And it's what you want to talk about here is the well-coached team. Dan Hurley gets these players out the portal, whether it's a Tristan Newton, Diarra, or Spencer. They've always been able to come in, fit in the role, and then play their part. Spencer was just incredible. It almost reminds me of a Dan Hurley on the coach. And one of the ESPN analysts said Greenberg called him Dan Hurley Spencer, or Spencer Dan Hurley, because the kind of passion he generates, the kind of knowledge that he has. He had about 11 or 12 points, but he also had about 8 rebounds, and that's for a guard. And UConn's guards, each of the guards actually averaged over 5 rebounds in this game. And that pretty much tells you the story. Like, guards they get their rebounds. Klingon gets his blocks and rebounds. And the role players continue to gel. And this is incredible. Just watching UConn dominate the field. The last 12 games that they played in the NCAA tournament, they won by double digits, but an average margin of 13 points, including the national championship game yesterday. Purdue was in the game, but once UConn took the lead in the second half, once it got to like 9 and 10, the game was pretty much over for Purdue, unless they changed their mindset of going to the three-point line. UConn just showed why they're heart of the champion by playing amazing offense, lockdown defense, rebounding, and then just the overall commitment to playing this game as a team. And it's not about one player. Every player had their part in each of the games. Steph Castle had an amazing game in the Final Four game against Alabama, but in this game he was just effective from a defensive standpoint. Had great defense on Braden Smith. So did Cam Spencer. So UConn goes back-to-back 6 championship in the last 25 years. No other team has ever had it. There's only 2 teams you have way up there. North Carolina. They've tied North Carolina with 6 championships also. Who would have thought that they're one over Duke, and Duke is considered one of the storied programs in NCAA. But for now, it's UConn with 6 championships in 25 years. All started with Jim Calhoun in 1999, where they defeated Duke, and it is not done yet. And to Hurley's comment 3 years ago, when he said it's coming. It's been coming, and it's been reigning championships in UConn, back-to-back championships. And most consider that this is the 2-year dominant run. I don't think it has ever happened in the NCAA. I mean, other than you have to go back all the way to UCLA, the John Wooden years, and then Mike Kay in Duke. So UConn raises another banner in Storrs. Storrs is now the basketball capital of the world. When they say it, they've proved it over and over again, and counting that with the women's 11 championships. So UConn will be back. They'll be one of the top favorites again in 2025. Let's see what the transfer portal begets for Danny Hurley. But for now, UConn beats Purdue 75-60. These were the top 2 teams in the NCAA entire year, and it came down to UConn cutting down the nets in the desert in Arizona. And there you go. I mean, with this has been a fun recap in terms of not just as a basketball fan, but also as a UConn fan. It was incredible what this team has given. Being able to see this team in person, how they show the physicality, and how they execute as a team, how they play as a team, how they play for the coach, and how they play for each other. That's the story here. It's a team sport, and no team embodied the team sport than UConn did. So with that, I would like to wrap up. UConn Huskies, congratulations. my alma mater. Really proud that they're raising their sixth banner. There's going to be a parade in Hartford, and looking forward to it. And there you go. That's the wrap for the national championship game. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting. And I really do appreciate Dr. Dan for coming during stretches of this tournament to provide his insight and commentary. And we will turn our page to the Masters in a couple of days. So looking forward to that. So with that, go Huskies. Thank you so much for listening.